This is my BMW E30 and it spent 18 years of its life abandoned in a bush. And all the rust, cobwebs, and even the mud are signs of how rough this car's life has really been. But after all that misery, I'm gonna save this E30 and give it a new life. In the last couple of episodes, I started the car, did a burnout, and started to strip it because we had one question on our mind. Is the car even savable? And the answer is yes, it is possible, but not without a plan. So here is a broad to-do list of all the steps I'm gonna follow in order to rebuild my E30. Step 1, buy the cheapest and rustiest E30 in the country. Okay, I've definitely did that. Step 2, confirm if the car is repairable. Did that in the last video. And the next stage is to repair the chassis. But before I get there, there's one more thing I have to do first. I have to strip the car down to a bare shell, which means I have to do all of this. It's a very long list, so let's get stuck into it and begin with the exhaust. And I'm starting with the headers, which are bolted onto the exhaust manifold with these 4 nuts here. Luckily for me, with the help of the impact and some WD-40, they're coming off pretty easy. So theoretically now, I should be able to move the exhaust off the top. But no matter how hard I pulled, it didn't move even a little bit. It's definitely not connected, but I think if I remove more of the hangers, then I should have more movement to pull it down. So let's move further down the car. The rest of the exhaust is connected to a bracket on the gearbox, a rubber mount near the back of the car, which just broke off, and 2 more rubber mounts holding up the back box, which aren't coming off that easily. It's not even been an hour yet and the grinder's already coming out. And believe me, I will be using the grinder a lot more throughout this video. See how the whole exhaust just dropped? Oh, I think it's disconnected. Even though nothing is holding the exhaust on anymore, it just doesn't want to come off the manifold, so I'm left with no other choice but to remove the cap back, which I really wanted to avoid because obviously it seized. But after some friendly persuasion by cameraman Rob, it finally came off. Ah! That nearly went up me. That box is off. Yeah. Oh, that's easy. Let me see if I can pull it off easier now. Ouch! I was not expecting it to be that easy. Yes, yes, yes. Yes! Exhaust is off! So the exhaust is finally off, so I can cross out the first thing and move on to the next thing, which is remove the heat shields. Hopefully that goes as smooth. Which actually was going really smooth until the last bolt. All right, that one's off. Oh, Jesus Christ, whoa! But luckily I have to replace this heat shield anyway, so we just yanked it off. That was absolutely disgusting. With that out of the way, I can now move on to removing the prop shaft. At the gearbox, it's held in with 3 bolts. The first one I can get to easily and remove it. Then cameraman Rob is putting the car into neutral to allow the prop shaft to turn so I can get to the next bolt. Yep. Then he's putting it back into gear to stop the prop from spinning and I can get the second bolt out. And then just repeat. Neutral, find the bolt, into gear, remove the bolt, easy. Oh, this is going so smooth. Oh my gosh. The rear is the same and it was also pretty easy until the last bolt. Oh shit. Okay, so I've had my first issue. I can't complain because it's gone so well so far, which I was expecting every bolt to be too rusty to remove, but the issue is self-caused. It's man-made issue because I rounded a bolt. I got off 3 and the last one I rounded to I've tried a smaller spanner, doesn't fit. I've tried hammering, doesn't work. Tried an adjustable, doesn't work. Tried pliers, doesn't work. So I've got a grinder. And that's gonna work. This is also a pretty awkward spot to grind because there isn't much room, but with a bit of patience, I managed to cut the bolt off. I think I've grinded enough of it off. Let me just see. It's out, it's out.
Got it?
Yeah, it comes out. Okay, minor bump in the road. Grinder's only been used twice now. I don't think that's too bad for a car that spent nearly 20 years in a bush. Anyway, the last thing holding the prop shaft in is the center bearing, which is bolted to the car with 2 bolts. And just like that, it's out. So there is already a change of plans. Let me show you why. So above me is the fuel tank on both sides, and to remove it, there's 5 bolts. This is one, which is easy to get to. And then either side at the top, there's one here, and there's another one on the other side over there. But there's 2 under the rear subframe. So where is it? Here is one of them and the other one's on the other side. Look how awkward it would be with this here. So instead of battling with the rear subframe and trying to work around it, since I'm removing it anyway, I might as well get it out of my way first, and then I can drop the fuel tank easier, drop all the lines easier, because, I mean, nothing's in my way. And the reason I need to reposition the jack stands before I'm able to drop the subframe is because right now, my rear jack stands are literally on the bolt of the subframe. So I have to move the position of them first. The only reason the jack stands are there in the first place is because the seals are just too weak to hold the car up. This section here with the 2 Allen key bolts seems to be the strongest, so I'm leaving the jack stands here, which is actually a bad idea, and you'll see why soon. Okay, I didn't hear no noise. Well, that's really good if you compare it to the front. Look how badly that went in. That just completely got rid of my seal in that location completely. All right, the rear is repositioned. I can get the subframe out now. To remove the subframe, normally you would remove the suspension and diff before doing so. But to save time, I am removing it all as one assembly. The shocks, rear diff mount, the sway bar bushing brackets, and finally the 2 big subframe nuts are the only things holding the whole rear assembly on the car. Also, I thought.
The jack is off the diff.
Come on, why is it not falling? The jack was fully off the subframe, but it didn't move. Not even a little bit. I tried hammering my pry bar in between the subframe and the chassis, which seemed to be doing something. Oh, what the hell was that? But after more hammering, nothing was happening. So I had a closer look and realized the 2 Allen key bolts where we just put the jack stands, those weren't random clamp bolts for the quarter panel, they hold in 2 more subframe brackets. I have to admit, that is a pretty silly mistake of mine. Oh! The jack's off and the whole suspension just dropped lower than I've seen it. Now there is definitely nothing holding the subframe up other than the brake lines. And there is no way they are strong enough to hold all of this weight. So me and Rob are bouncing the suspension up and down, trying to make the subframe drop. And eventually... Bro, see how fucking strong I am compared to you. Oh,
yes.
Mine's out, mine's out.
Yes.
Mine's fully out. Left, right, and up. Oh, I told you. Left, right, and up and down. But Rob's side was still stuck. And looking back at it now, it's pretty obvious why. The rear subframe is just a beam that is held in with 2 bolts, and everything else that is connected to it is behind it. We currently have the jack on the rear diff, and as we lower it, the subframe leans back and is getting stuck on the studs. And as you can see, as soon as Rob jacks it up from behind and makes it level, it comes off with ease. Another silly mistake that, in hindsight, is pretty obvious. Now the subframe is fully down, I only have the handbrake wire and the brake line wire that goes to the caliper connected on both sides. I've looked online and it's a proper hassle to take them off properly. So what I'm going to do instead is cut them off. Usually I wouldn't do this because you would obviously reuse all the brake lines. But as this car is 34 years old, I think it could do with a new set of lines and hoses anyway. Sweet! I should be able to fully take the subframe out now. Oh my God! I've never seen this before, you know? This actually looks so insane to actually see it out of a car. It really just comprehends how everything comes together. So as of yesterday, I finished the big job of removing the rear subframe. So that means before I can move on to working at the front of the car, I just need to remove all the lines underneath the car, reposition the jack stands, and then I can start with the front of the car. And to do all of that, the last thing in the way is to remove the fuel tank. Something I've never done before. Kind of like everything else with this build, to be honest. Everything's new. And I'm starting by removing any lines and hoses I can because there's still fuel in the tank. But my drain plug looks like this. Yeah, that's not coming off. But of course, no fuel will come out of the fuel hose, and the line joining the 2 parts of the tank is also unmovable, so I'm just moving on. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting high just having this pipe in my face. I can now go back up inside the car because I need to disconnect all the hoses going to the fuel pump and remove the pump itself. And with the fuel pump out, you can see that there is actually quite a bit of fuel still in the tank. So let's hope none of those bolts need grinding off. I can now remove the feed and return line and start removing the bolts for the fuel tank. Look at that! Look at that dirt under the car. Theoretically, the fuel tank is no longer collected.
Something stuck. Why is this side not coming?
Yeah, that side does look like it's not coming back. Look at the hay. My first time seeing a fuel tank out of the car. I'm very happy that we didn't need the grinder because there was nearly 15 litres of fuel left in the tank. Remove fuel tank is complete. Next thing, remove all lines running under the car. Let's go. I'm starting from the back by removing the brake line T-piece, and I'm trying to be as careful as possible when removing everything because when it's time to put the car back together, I'll be making new brake lines, and if I don't bend these, it will be a lot easier as I'll be able to use them almost as a guide to make the new ones. The last line at the back of the car is the evap hose, which runs all the way from the expansion tank at the rear to the charcoal canister at the front. Now I can unclip that line as well as the fuel fill and return lines and the rear brake line from underneath the car all the way to the front. Cameraman Rob can then disconnect the evap line from the charcoal canister in the engine bay, and I can pull it out from underneath. Woo! Then I can remove the fuel feed line. Okay. And the fuel return line. And as I said, because I won't be reusing the brake lines, I'm just cutting the brake line where it connects to the connector thing in the engine bay. Alright, so all the lines are now removed under the car, and that means there's one more thing to do now before I can take the engine out, which is to reposition the jack stands. Because right now they're on the front subframe, and I'm going to be removing the subframe, of course, so they can't stay on there. So now, where I'm going to be putting the jack stands, I can't put them on the pinch welds here because I tried that before and it bent straight in. I also can't put it on the front jacking points because they're rusted to shit, and I can't keep it on the front subframe. So what I'm going to be doing is putting two jack stands under the frame rails. I am risking the frame rails getting fucked too, but I actually have no other choice right now. So it's gonna have to be the frame rails. Happy for me to proceed? Woo! Damn, after all that time spending under the car, I can finally start working on my feet. I can actually work in the engine bay now. Monumental. I'm back up to date with my plan. Finally, it is time to start working on the front end, and the plan is to do a bunch of things at the same time. According to the whiteboard, I am meant to start by draining all the fluids first, but the parts that hold these fluids also need to be removed. For example, I'm draining the coolant now, but the radiator, all the coolant hoses, and the fan shroud needs to be removed too. So I might as well get it all off in one go. Nice! The same goes for the power steering. I need to drain the fluid out of the system, but as I'm there already, I might as well remove the lines and the reservoir at the same time. I'm draining all the fluids and removing all these parts because the next big step is removing the engine, which means everything and anything connecting to it needs to be removed, like the alternator wiring and the alternator itself. My precious, my precious. And while I'm up there, I might as well remove the rest of the bits and bobs connected to the engine, like this vacuum line going to the brake booster, the fuel lines going to the fuel rail, fuel filter, charcoal canister, and finally, the coolant lines going to the heater core. Moving to the other side, there are only 3 things to do. Disconnect the ignition coil, the ground connected to the engine mount, and the throttle cable on top of the engine. That leaves me with the last thing I need to do in the engine bay, and that is disconnecting all the engine wiring. And luckily for me, this car is from 1990, so it's very straightforward and there isn't that much to disconnect. I'm gonna rest it in the rust hole. It'll be perfectly safe in the rust hole. With the engine bay prepped, I have to go back under the car again to drain the engine and gearbox oil.
Whoa.
You know when you've been holding that poo in all day and you go straight to the toilet? Remove the slave cylinder, which is in a very awkward spot. Oh yeah. Unbolt the shifter linkage, and lastly, the gearbox mount and the gearbox cross member. Gearbox is actually not connected to the car anymore. Okay, so now everything from underneath the car is disconnected, meaning I can pull the engine out. I just need to pull the shifter down because the shifter is... Pull it down, push it down. I need to pull the shifter down.
You just said it again.
Push the shifter. I don't know. Clearly I pushed my pull doors. But push it down because the shifter's like riveted to the gearbox and stuff. So as I'm pulling out the engine, I'm going to be pulling out the gearbox, which is pulling out the shifter connected to it. So hopefully it doesn't give me any drama because fucking hell, it's wobbly down there. I'm literally 4 bolts away from making this happen. Oh yeah, I've got so many things to wipe off now. Right, guys. I'm gonna cross off quite a bit right now. I have officially drained all the fluids. I've removed the radiator, disconnected all engine and wiring and plumbing. Yes, I have. Oh, remove engine and gearbox. My first one ever. Like, I'm excited, but I am nervous. I'm really nervous. And to add to those nerves, I'm doing this in the most not ideal conditions possible. No lift, uneven floor, I'm outdoors, and the list just goes on and on. But you guys know me by now. I'm not the type to give up that easy. I can't believe I'm about to take off my first engine ever. I'm actually super nervous because I don't want nothing to go wrong. But there's no turning back now. That should be fine. Make sure I'm getting everything in. Okay. All right. All right, I'm gonna lift it up slightly. Oh, it's lifting. Okay. I think it's lifted enough. It's time. That's off. All right. The engine has not dropped on the floor. That means it is being held up. I don't really know what I'm doing per se. Like, it is my first one, but I think I'm gonna try pull it back a bit now because it feels a bit high. It's fucking heavy. Do I lift it more? Do I drop it a bit? Maybe it's stuck. It's crunching on something. So all right. It's the fucking floor.
The gearbox is touching.
That's what needs to go higher. It needs to go higher.
Yes.
That's good. We're off the subframe now. The shifter's come out. Shifter's come out good. I need to go in to get that over.
That's it.
Maybe in more?
Yes. No, keep going. Yeah.
Shit. Are we all on jack stands?
Yep. That's it.
Lift it up more? You need to support the back. I can move it higher, no? I need it higher, bro. Oh shit, why is the floor so uneven?
Done.
I just took out my first engine. Look at this picture. Who knew a shitty MX-5 just working the cars on my driveway? I'd have an engine right here with me. This is actually like one for the books. I can't lie, I was expecting it to be harder. I must not be a YouTube mechanic anymore. I must be a certified qualified one.
I wouldn't go that far.
All right, it's the next day now, and in true British fashion, it is miserable and it's raining, but I'm not miserable and I'm very excited because today I have a lot to do. The engine is out, but there's still a lot to remove in the engine bay, and I'm gonna start with removing the front subframe. Let's go. Clearly I haven't learned from the rear subframe, but I'm removing the front one with everything still attached to it, just like we did in the rear. Let's just hope this is easier. And when I say I'm leaving everything attached, I'm not even removing the calipers. Instead, I'm removing the brake line from the caliper, and I'm not removing it from where it connects to the hard line because, as you can imagine, those nuts are not coming off no matter what. And I'm not worried about damaging them, as obviously I'll replace them. Yes! Oh. I am now loosening up the steering shaft and removing the bolts holding on the lower control arms. It's almost time to drop it, so let's get it supported so it doesn't smash on the floor. With the jack supporting the subframe, I can now remove the 4 bolts that bolt it to the chassis. Yes. Nice. 6 more bolts on the top to remove, and then it should be fully disconnected. Okay, nothing's happened this side. One more nut. Oh, I saw it drop. Okay, it's definitely dropped. Look at the strut towers on both sides. So technically, if I drop the jack now, the subframe should fall with it and I should be able to pull it out. Yeah. It might need some more persuasion. And as expected, the steering shaft joint is quite stiff and it isn't dropping that easily. But it's nothing a bit of WD-40 and some hammering can't sort out. I don't even know if I can get it out. Like, I'm just dragging it. Thank God I'm not using this again, but I'm just literally dragging all the hubs on the floor right now to get it out. It's gonna fall off. How? And roll it like a car. Done. Subframe is out. Both subframes. Even though the whole drivetrain is out now, to be able to properly sandblast the car, I need to get it down to a complete bare shell. So I got a lot more work to do. To finish up in the engine bay, I need to go to the interior and remove the glove box. Full glove box there. And some other plastic trims. Oh yes. Which then reveals the 4 bolts holding in the brake booster. So these are the bolts here for the brake booster. Ah, yes! Now we can loosen up the rear brake line, both the front brake lines, and finally pull it out. Nice! Oh, yes. And now with the brake booster fully out of the way, I can remove the rest of the hard lines. There's a small one for the rear brakes. One line for the clutch pedal. And one final line that goes through the wheel arches to the front calipers. Alright, I think it's time to start touching wires. I find wiring quite scary. It's just so complicated. And yeah, I've come to the point where I've had to now mess around with wires. The time's come and I can't avoid it. And immediately I ran into a problem. There is a bunch of extra wiring on the engine harness side, but on closer inspection, it doesn't even connect to anything. We think it's all to do with a terrible aftermarket security system and sound system install, but more on that later. Right now, I'm removing the body harness from all the clips and zip ties that are holding it into the car, and untangling the headlight level adjusters that go into the car through a different hole. Aha! Separated. Okay, now I'm gonna sort the engine wiring out, disconnect it all from here, and move the engine wiring to this side because I can already see that it goes into the dash through the car through here. So it's on the right side of the car. On the right side, there isn't too much to do. I just need to remove a few ground connections, the ignition coil, some of the dodgy immobilizer wiring. Okay, noise. And finally, I can disconnect the engine harness from this plastic holder, disconnect the connection at the diagnostic plug, and lastly, the power cable going to the fuse box. I've gotten rid of this extra wiring that I think is from the security immobilizer that someone has put into this car. I just hope that I don't regret removing these later, but they're gone. It looks like that was the only bolt holding in the fuse box, and the only thing holding it here now is just wiring that goes into the car. So that means all the wiring in the engine bay is ready to be removed as soon as the dashboard is out. But while I'm in here, I'm finishing up the engine bay strip down by removing the bonnet latches, the hinge, and latch mechanisms at the front, the aftermarket alarm, and leaving the worst to last, the firewall installation. I say the worst because I'm expecting to find a lot more rust behind it. But it's actually looking pretty good. Look, it's so blue here. And what we have found is this is where it goes up to. See the rust hole that we had in the inner arch of the passenger side and through the glove box. This is where it ends up. It's not huge. There's more rust here. I mean, this is the other inner arch of the driver's side. This is the inside view of the hole. And there's a bit of surface rust here under the battery tray. But here, where the transmission goes, it's looking so good. I'm really happy with this. An actual win for the build, so I'm feeling happy. And the engine bay, can we appreciate it, guys? I'm in the engine bay. Technically, I have kind of fully stripped the engine bay, so that's off, and I can finally remove the dash. And to help me, I have a forum, thank God to old forums, written in 2010 that's gonna help me remove this dash. All right, the reason I'm taking extra extra care of the dash is because I don't want to crack or break it. Like, I have an immaculate dashboard right now. I have a small crack, tiny crack, but these dashes, they're expensive, they're rare, and I do not want to mess up. I'm not taking any risks. I'm not going to miss any bolt, so I'm going to follow every single step of whoever wrote this with pictures. Thank you. And hopefully, I don't make big damage. I don't want to cause big damage because an uncracked right-hand drive E30 dashboard is not only near impossible to find, but they also cost upwards of £1,000. And of course, I'm already struggling with getting off the steering wheel. Like this.
There's no way that the steering lock is holding on, is there?
Maybe. Wait, it literally says, make sure the steering lock is on while you remove the nut. Then take the steering lock off and pull off the steering wheel. Wow! Wow, all that for nothing. At least I didn't break it. I guess it's pretty hard to break a steering wheel, but the cluster, well, that's a different story. These are both brackets that I just took the screws out of. This is the bracket that just broke off the cluster. That I just broke off it. And I just read the forum. Now, you can now pull out the instrument panel. Be careful with the A-shaped ears, these things. They are easy to break off. Let's hope that this is the only damage we cause. I can now remove the headlight adjuster panel. This. I'm done with your ass. I'm done with your behaviour. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the ECU to reveal the bracket holding in the dash. On the other side, I can get to the dashboard bracket easy as I already have removed the glove box and all the panels around it. That bracket is so rusty. And finally, I can remove the radio and all the other bits around there. Disconnect them and the dash is ready to come out. It's a pretty tight fit, but I really don't want to damage it. So me and Rob are taking our time, wiggling it up and down, back and forth, just trying to get it out. The memory card ran out of space whilst I was removing the dash, but as you can see, the dash is out and I didn't make any more damage than that one crack it already had. So I'm really proud of us for not doing that. Cameraman Rob helped as well. And I can cross off, remove the dash. And the next thing is remove all the wiring. As you can see, there is a lot of wiring behind the dash. It looks very, very scary. And it's actually made me pissed off, to be honest, because whoever's done the wiring for an aftermarket speaker and an aftermarket immobilizer, I've got problems with you. And I'm gonna fight you if I ever see you and if I ever find you, we're gonna fight. Because how can you be doing wiring jobs like this? You've made such a mess of my wiring. Let me just explain. Firstly, this was on the passenger side for the passenger side speaker. Just extra wire, just long wire that ended to nowhere. It was just dangling. And it was the same on the other side. You have a bunch of wires just here. Loads of loose wires just tied up to nothing.
Show him the antenna.
Oh, the antenna, yeah, he's messed around with that as well. Look at this. He's untaped the harness and just got loose wires everywhere.
Fucked it all up.
Fucked it all up, but the driver's side is like the top tier fucked up. He's clearly untangled the harness, hasn't tangled it back together, so just untied a bunch of wires that were meant to be looking neat and done this, left this. Yeah, I hope like you are not doing any more wiring work, mate, because you really made my life horrible. You've made me sad today. And I found a number in the glove box, so I decided to text that number and they've ignored me. So I don't know if they're still alive, but if they are still alive and you're watching this and you know who done the wiring for your car, if you own this, you need to message them and get your money back because they fucked up your wiring.
I don't think they'll get their money back 20, 30 years later.
To be honest, they shouldn't get their money back because they left my car rusting in the bush. With that little rant out of the way, I'm getting on with removing the wiring harness and starting with the easier bit, the engine harness. I can just unplug the ECU and pull it through. Oh yeah, succulent. Succulent removal technique. This is an engine harness. I just hit myself in the nose. Then, in the interior, all the wiring needs to be unclipped and all the wiring on the right side needs to be taken to the left as that's where it comes out from. Moving to the back, I need to remove the license plate trim and lights. Unclip the tail light harness, remove the boot latch mechanism and cable. And of course, the dreadful antenna wiring. Well, that was a bit dramatic when I'm trying to be quiet. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a mechanic. With those bits all free, I can now pull the harness through the hole in the firewall and into the cabin. Damn, buddy. That's a whole lot of wires. Then the big heater box thing, I don't even know what it's called, but regardless, it needs to go because some of the wiring harness runs behind it. Right. Is it loose? Yes. It's off? Yeah, it's completely off. But as you can see, there's wires zip tied on it. So I think it's time to start taking off what is necessary. And all the harness that runs across it is all the wiring for the steering wheel controls, lights, ignition, and the cluster. So I'm disconnecting all of that now. Nice. Oh yeah. Yeah. What is the first zip tie? Alright. There's another small harness running through the heater box, and it has some connections on itself too that need to be disconnected. Yes, you're so strong. Nice! It just needed a bit of balls. Finally, there is a small plastic bracket that holds up 3 huge relay connector looking things. Again, no clue what they are. But what I do know is that I cannot get them off this bracket, so I'm getting cameraman Rob to get them off. And after all of that, the wiring harness is free. Rob is feeding it through the hole in the firewall while I'm on the outside pulling it out. Holy moly! No wires in the car. I can't believe for someone who's so scared of wiring, I have a whole car's wiring out of the car. Like, this looks so messy. There's the back. There's the front. Damn. Does anyone know a wiring guy? Because I will need some help. I think I will need help with more than just the wiring, but that's a problem for another day. There's one more thing holding this car back from being a complete shell. Well, actually 4 things, because it's all the 4 glass. Once I remove all the glass, it's going to be a complete shell. And thanks to this car being from the 1990s, this is going to be the easiest windscreen and glass removal you've ever seen. You could literally hire me, Autoglass, because it's going to be super quick. When I say this will be the easiest part of the whole strip down, I'm not joking. In the 80s and 90s, BMW didn't even use glue on their windscreen. All that's holding it in is this rubber trim in the middle of the windowsill. Now I need to push the windscreen out at the top, all along. But that's like stuck in as well. Just like this. Wait. I gotta push it out this side. Now, lift it this way. Done! I honestly can't believe it's that easy. I love old cars. Perfect. The side windows are even easier. All that's holding them in are 2 bolts on the B-pillar and a tight fit. It's a boy! And no, I'm not kicking the glass out as a joke. According to the online forum, this is actually the easiest way of removing the windows. The car literally jiggled off the jack stand. The rear window is exactly the same as the front. Remove the rubber trim, push the glass out at the top, and remove it. Amazing. Beautiful. And just like that, the E30 is stripped down to a bare shell. Kind of. And now the glass is removed, it looks like I have an actual shell on my driveway. Well, I actually do. I do have a shell on my driveway. The first shell I've ever owned. It's crazy. I can now take away, remove all glass, and the rest of the things are just minor things that I'll be doing on my second channel alongside jet washing this whole shell. So if you want to see that, make sure you go and check out the second channel where I do smaller things. But for this video, I think I'm going to end it here, guys. I've done a lot to this car. From where it first started in this video to now, there's a big difference. And I definitely have the battle marks to prove it. I'm literally bleeding on my finger. I'm cut everywhere. But look at my shell. Look at my BMW E30. Thank you all for watching this video, and subscribe so that you can see in the next video where I'm going to be starting the repairs. And also leave a like and a comment because it really does help the channel. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. No. All right, I've actually got eye protection on because I'm working with a disgusting rusty car, and there's going to be some disgusting things that are going to fall on my face. I've had disgusting things on my face, but not this disgusting. This is going to be really gross. So I got some goggles. She was a winner, started working at the dime. 316i M40 E30. Huh?
Yeah, just the engine.
No. Oh my god! Really? No, it says Wallow 92. That's why I said oh my god, because it's like, am I a Volkswagen or a Polo? What's on my back?
The mic.
The micro. It's because I have a box on my back. Yeah, true say, every time you lot might come see me in person, I might have a microphone on and I might be recording our conversations and I might send it to the police. Wow, they make it look really easy on the forum, isn't it? Because I can't even find these nuts in the car. Like, stop it. Sexualizing everything. Literally.